Yeah, would you give us an overview on Senate Bill 52?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill number 52 relates to Kansas adjusted gross income for purposes of income tax and would provide a formula to increase the limit to qualify for a subtraction modification for Social Security benefits. And it would also provide a new subtraction modification for certain amounts of retirement income. As you recall, I think from Eddie's presentation a week or two ago, Kansas adjusted gross income for an individual means that individual's federal adjusted gross income with certain modifications. And there's a statute that has addition modifications as well as subtraction modifications. And when we think about subtraction modifications, what those are actually doing is removing income from federal adjusted gross income for purposes of Kansas adjusted gross income. Thereby, when you subtract the income, sometimes we think about that as an exemption or income that is not taxable in Kansas. So just when I say subtraction modification, you can kind of think of it that way, that it's coming out of the taxable income, okay? Currently, KSA 7932-117C provides a subtraction modification for Social Security benefits of a taxpayer when that taxpayer has federal adjusted gross income of $75,000 or less. Their Social Security, if they meet that income threshold, they're allowed to subtract their Social Security benefits from federal adjusted gross income to the degree that it's in there. That applies whether the taxpayer is a single filer, head of household filer, or a joint filer. The bill would amend this particular paragraph, and if you turn to page 8 and 9 of the bill, you'll actually find the new amended language that provides this formula. This amended language would provide a linear transition between $75,000 and $85,000. So that there isn't what sometimes is referred to as a cliff at that $75,000 mark. That if they're under 75, their Social Security benefits are not taxable. As soon as they hit $75,001, their income is taxable. So what this does is it's providing a formula for taxpayers with federal adjusted gross incomes over 75,000 but under 85,000. And it is transitioning and giving them a percentage, calculating a percentage within that range of how much of their Social Security income would be allowed to be subtracted. Okay, so the closer the taxpayer is to $75,000 in that range, they are allowed the formula provides a larger rate of their Social Security income to be subtracted or not taxed. The calculation itself, if you look at page 8, the subtraction modification starting at line 35 is equal to their Social Security income multiplied by the Social Security taxable rate. And then from then on, it talks about how to derive that taxable rate. It is a linear calculation. So the rate, though, is 1 for those taxpayers who have $75,000 of income or less, which means all of their Social Security income remains in this subtraction modification. But the taxable rate is 0 for those who have $85,000 or more. So they do not qualify for the subtraction modification. There is a provision, however, that annually, that provision begins in 2023. Beginning in 24, though, there is a $5,000 adjustment to that upper threshold number. So for 2023, it's $85,000, and then in 24, it would go to $90,000, and so on. So the eligible taxpayer pool would grow annually. It would give that transition more eligible taxpayers. The other amendment within Senate Bill 52 is found on pages 10 and 11, and it provides a new subtraction modification to subtract amounts received by retired individuals under all retirement plans to the extent they're included in their federal adjusted gross income, up to $2,000 for an individual or $4,000 for married couples filing jointly. Those limits would also be increased annually after 2023 by a cost of living adjustment. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. It's a good explanation. Senator Holland?
I have a number of technical questions, Madam Chair. I don't know if they're appropriate for Amelia or research. I just throw them out on the table.
Throw them out and I'll decide.
Excellent. Very good. Amelia, thanks for the explanation this morning. So just, I want to be sure I understand. Last year, the legislation we passed basically has a ratchet mechanism for moving that $75,000 up. What did we do last year again with this?
This is the exact bill that we passed in the conference committee. This is the exact language. Last year, for a couple of years, the Senate removed it completely. We didn't pass a ratchet, and this was the agreement in conference committee. This
So
language.
This bill is what, okay, but last year we passed nothing with Social Security.
Except in conference committee report 2259.
Okay, but that did not become law. Okay, so my question would be, just so I understand here, what we're talking about, that 75,000 or less currently, that's a combination of all reportable income, correct?
It is, the $75,000 is the federal adjusted gross income.
So that'd be all income sources to be reported for the line. It's not just your Social Security income, it could be whatever.
Correct. It is based on what your federal return showed as your federal adjusted gross income.
Okay.
Correct.
So I guess what I'm wondering too is that if, first of all, if maybe this is for Department of Revenue, Madam Chair, I don't know, but basically I would like to see basically runs on who would be getting the by income, who would be receiving the benefits for the Social Security break. If you're to take these two policy pieces separately, who's getting a benefit on the Social Security side versus who is getting the benefit on the income, I'm sorry, on the retirement plan side. If we could see some numbers on that from some, that would be helpful for me in understanding the policy better.
Kathleen, would you guys be able to provide a comparison on that? I know that's a pretty big ask. Okay, thank you.
And then, Madam Chair, when we talk about, it says so that second piece, the amount for all retirement plans, would that be like IRAs, 401ks, ESOPs? What retirement plan vehicles are we talking about there?
We'll get back to you on that. It does include all retirement plans, but we'll make sure that we've got a list of that.
Okay, and then then a final question for the revisor, then I will stand down. My understanding of a lot of these retirement plans, the beauty of them is basically the contributor can make them basically pre-tax. And so I think with the expectation that basically that being a deferred tax that would be paid at the time, then you basically start pulling that stuff out. I want to basically, if we're doing this, I want to understand basically how these retirement plans work, if that in fact is the case, so we understand that as well too.
So I will ask Betty, would you mind putting together a chart for the committee on the retirement plans and whether they're pre-tax, post-tax? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, Senator Baumgart.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Amelia, for your work. Quick question. When we are looking at, I'm looking specifically at lines 27, 28 on page 8. So it says whether a taxpayer's filing status is single, head of household, married filing separately, or married filing jointly. So the married filing jointly, is the limitation that 75 to 85,000 for the combined income?
The language you're looking at there in those particular lines is the current provision, so it only applies to 75,000, and it is applicable to that joint filing. It is not doubled for that joint filing. So that taxpayers merely filing joint return is $75,000.
So I guess my question is it possible for us to get some runs on how we feel filings will change should something like this pass, where we have couples that typically file jointly will now be filing separately?
If I may, what I will ask for instead is a fiscal note from the Revenue Department on what it would do to decrease or remove the marriage penalty for Social Security, so we could increase it. It's a substantial increase to the fiscal note, Senator, just so you're aware, but that would be more what you're looking for. This would not change the current filings because they already have the cliff and they already have the marriage penalty, to use the terminology. So I think you're looking to fix the marriage penalty, and we need the fiscal note in order to do so. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
you're welcome. Committee, I will draw your attention to the fiscal note on this, because we need to take a look at this bill and the next hearing and compare those fiscal notes. They're substantially different, and a big difference in this policy. So any other questions for Amelia? Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Amelia. Just so I understand, so we're moving the threshold, or what we have called the cliff, from 75,000 to 85,000, correct?
What we are doing, oh yes, go ahead, Amelia, go for it.
I will attempt this again because it is a little, our terminology is, yes, $75,000 is currently what is referred to as the cliff. This is, I would say, kind of generally attempting to smooth out that cliff from 75 to 85.
$85,001.
You are correct, could be categorized by some as another cliff. What this provision does do, though, is that $85,000 continues to increase annually. So for 1 year, it goes to, the first year, 23, it's 85 is the range for that linear rate. The following year, it will go to 90. It increases by 5,000 each year. So it'll go to 90, 95.
Is there a limit? I mean, 5,000 every year in
Senator
perpetuity?
Erickson. So what it does is it eventually removes state income tax on Social Security.
Okay,
It makes
that's
the
what I'm-
fiscal note much more palatable. That's what you're asking.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, and we found last year by doing the calculation, and Eddie can correct me, in 4 to 5 years, it's almost negligible as to who is impacted by those increases. So they'd eventually go away in statute.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions for Amelia? Seeing none, thank you. Committee, our first conferee is Glenda Du Bois from the ARP. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Senator Karen Tyson and Senate Committee on Assessment and Taxation. I am Glenda Du Bois, and I am the State Director for AARP Kansas. AARP Kansas has over 278,000 members. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works across Kansas to strengthen communities and advocate for issues that matter most to families, such as healthcare, employment, income security, retirement planning, affordable utilities, and protection from financial abuse. Thank you today for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 52 and Senate Bill 33, which would increase the income exemption for the state tax on Social Security benefit, which is Senate Bill 52, and exempt all Social Security income from the state taxation, Senate Bill 33, respectively. Both bills will help ensure that even more middle-class retirees and their families can keep more of their hard-earned benefits, a continued priority for AARP Kansas. Kansas is one of only 12 states that still tax Social Security benefits. We continuously hear from our members and your constituents that aside from being grossly unfair, these taxes on their Social Security prescriptions could benefit, these benefits could go to costs could go to pay for essential ones, like paying for their ever-growing cost of prescription medication, as well as food and utility bills. In fact, according to AARP research, the average annual cost of prescription drug treatment increased by 26.3% between 2015 and 2019. Many retirees tell us that they are using their Social Security benefits to help care for their own parents, their spouses, and more often, and taking on the financial challenges of raising or helping to care for their grandchildren. They also feel they have limited options when rejoining the workforce, and virtually there's no horizon to increase their savings. Older Kansans on fixed incomes clearly feel the effects of inflation more than do the rest of us. Social Security tax relief is one way that the state of Kansas can help retirees stretch their hard-earned dollars. This will afford them increased financial security throughout their retirement years, hopefully. This will allow them to care for their family and age in their own homes and their communities, as so many of us would also like to be able to do. Moreover, these tax savings will come right back here to our state of Kansas. Our research shows that annual Social Security benefits to Kansas pump at least $6 billion into our state economy. Recipients buy goods and services with their Social Security benefits, increasing the business sales, which help not only the companies which make those sales, but also the firms that supply them into Kansas. The result is then more jobs and income to businesses and workers in Kansas. Within our state, Kansans age 50 and over create an economic impact much greater than their portion of the population. As the percentage of state residents over 50 continues to grow, so will their contributions to our economy. According to the Longevity Economy, a report that AARP had prepared, and The Economist, Kansans 50 and older generated 37% of the state's gross domestic product in 2018, which totaled $67 billion. Moreover, the report also found that the state residents 50 and older make up only just 35% of Kansas' population in 2018, but supported 795,000 jobs across the state and generated $45 billion in wage and salaries. Our older population in Kansas also contributed $3.9 billion in unpaid caregiving in 2018 for spouses, parents, aunts, uncles, and Kansas children. Kansas would be smart to consider maintaining and adopting programs and policies that keep this important economic engine in our state, rather than policies that might drive our retirees and their contributions to our state's economy and the workforce elsewhere. AARP Kansas, as always, we're available to work with this committee to achieve that end. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Glenda. Committee, any questions? Thank you. Senator Holland.
Ma'am, thank you for being here today. Do you have different perspectives on the Social Security policy piece on this versus the retirement income?
Perspectives, I do not at this point. I can certainly get that for you.
Okay, so you don't.
Are you
don't have a preference as far as the policy pieces? Do you think they both should be in the bill? Do you prefer one or the other?
AARP is really in support of the Social Security piece being included. That is what we are advocating for.
My only point, Madam Chair, is that we're really kind of talking, in my mind, apples and oranges here in this bill. To me, the Social Security is a program, a social safety net, obviously, was created by the federal government. And then the other portion.
Senator, do you have a question? We're not debating the bill right now.
No, I just think there's a discernment there. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question. You stated that Kansans pump at least $6 billion, and then your written statement says $10 billion. I was wondering your source.
I'm sorry?
When you were giving testimony, you said that older Kansans pump approximately $6 billion in the economy, and your written statement says $10 billion. And so I was wondering what your source was.
Our source comes from our research done at our national office in AARP.
Would $10 billion be accurate then?
Yes.
Thank you. Senator Hall.
And
Thank you, Madam
that could have
Chair.
changed in the dates of the bill.
And I want to follow up on
Writings.
the chairwoman's question because that kind of struck me too. But let me kind of ask in a different way. You talk about, if I understand, GDP of our seniors, correct? Is that the term? What does that really mean? We talk about how much they constitute the economy. Are we talking about basically, is this wages earned? Is this basically investment income? Is this Social Security? When you talk about basically their impact on the economy, what are the different factors going into measuring that?
It would be any of the revenue or the resources that they have that are put into the economy, that they spend.
Okay, so
Whatever those, and those could be varied
if you're getting
depending.
investment income stream, you're not spending it, that would not be part of what you're referring to as their contributions to the economy, correct?
Yes, that they have, that they spend, and that they spend into the economy
Okay, and just briefly,
of their income.
I guess what I'm looking for from Eddie then would be is that if we got some numbers for our seniors as far as their proportion of income that they receive annually, that would be helpful. Maybe by like an age, or maybe like a total income demographic, that'd be great. Thank you.
Eddie, I think the federal government has something on age and tax filings. Would you mind? Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Baumgardner and then Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for your testimony. My quick question is, 38 other states have this already in place. Our state happens to, at least the testimony provided by the Kansas Chamber shows population loss in Kansas. Are there other states that have experienced population loss where they implemented this and it helped them either slow down population loss or show growth of population?
Now, that's a very good question. To be specific, I don't have that data, but I could certainly get that from you.
Thank you.
Yes, but it is a very good, it's a good point when we're looking at trying to be able to keep retirees within our state and knowing that others will go where they're not being taxed. I think that's a known fact, for sure.
So Glenda, would you provide that to John, and John will distribute it to the committee members?
Okay, and we're wanting to know how that has impacted the other states, certainly.
Thank you. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Appreciate your testimony on Senate Bill 52 and then eventually 53. These both relate to income taxes. Strictly speaking, from a senior citizen perspective, we've got other proposals as it relates to sales or property taxes. Would AARP, if they were to choose one, and I know this is not really a fair question, which would benefit seniors the most? Income tax reduction, property tax reduction, sales tax?
You know, that is a very good question. And I would say that it really kind of depends upon the senior in that there are some, depending upon the senior and their particular situation. So therefore, it would be a little difficult right now to say which one would benefit one more than the others, because I think it's really, you know, when you think of the seniors and you think of their different income and their economic positions, I think it could, both are very, very vital and very, very critical. So I would want a little bit more data before I'd say, you know, one would be more beneficial than the other, if that would be agreeable with you, sir.
I appreciate that. And I knew that was a difficult
Yes,
question because
yes.
it does vary. Income tax is based off of money brought in. Property
Exactly.
tax has nothing to do with ability to pay.
But it still impacts their income and what they have to pay out, so,
I got that. I got that.
yes, sir.
Chairman.
Thank you. And it is a timely question. We'll be looking at income tax next week. So
Absolutely, and we will be looking at that too, so thank you.
thank you, Glenda.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our next conferee is Jason Watkins. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Watkins, appearing on behalf of the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. We are supportive of Senate Bill, I don't have my glasses, at 52, because we think it's a step in the right direction. Although I say a step in the right direction because we would actually urge you to eliminate the tax altogether on Social Security. I'd just say quickly, and I'll maybe expand a little more on the next bill, but the representative from the AARP brought up the issues related to seniors and the income that they need. Almost, you can make the point on survival, which I think can raise the moral question of, or the question of, is it morally right to tax somebody's Social Security? We're one of 12 states. We're soon going to be one of 11 states because Colorado is going to zero on Social Security as well. We come from a little different angle or question, and that is on the economic benefit. She talked about the money that goes into the Kansas economy based on Social Security. We really kind of started taking a look at this a few years ago when myself and the chamber CEO went to meet with a brand new CEO of a very large company in Wichita. And he had come from Florida. And it was an interesting conversation because he didn't really want to talk about his business a whole lot. He basically gave us about a 10-minute lecture on how crazy it is and how economically foolish it is that Kansas taxes Social Security. He said, we've been here a little bit, we like it, we enjoy it, but I'll tell you right now, as soon as we're done, we're out of here, because I will not live in a state that taxes my Social Security. And then he went on to talk about how these people work their entire lives, they accumulate wealth, it's time to enjoy life, they're going to spend some of that wealth, and where are you gonna do it? You're not gonna do it in a state that taxes your Social Security. That just makes no sense. So from an economic standpoint and a public policy standpoint for this legislature, we would really urge you not just to take a look at this bill, but go a step farther, and I think it's 53. I'll just quit mentioning numbers altogether. Oh, okay. Me too, Madam Chair. So again, we're supportive of this because it's a step in the right direction. We're a lot more supportive of the next bill because it goes to zero on Social Security income. So with that, I'd stand for questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jason, very much. Committee, any questions? Senator Holland.
Yeah, I'll be real quick, Madam Chair. I want to tease that a little bit more because I agree with you totally from a commerce perspective in our communities. It seems to me, just quite honestly, particularly seniors who, let's face it, we can say they are mobile and they will go out of state, but that's really the ones with more affluent and means to do that. The vast majority of our seniors, they're here because their family's here, and number two, they really don't have the dollars to pick up and move. So just from an economic standpoint, it seems to me, particularly for those more immobile seniors, we want to basically put more in their pockets. And so my question is I totally get the Social Security thing, but back to your gentleman who providing the reference, did he have the same feelings about retirement income coming off his investments that states should not touch that either? Or was he more focused on the Social Security argument? Because from my perspective, the Social Security should take precedence when we talk about keeping money in our seniors' pockets. But I just want to see if you had any thoughts on that.
He didn't mention retirement income. I know what you're talking about. He just, in his conversation with us, that was just about Social Security. So I can't tell you what his opinion was on the other retirement income.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, I draw your attention to Eric Stafford's written testimony. Any other proponents? Any opponents for the bill? Any neutral? Seeing none, committee, we're going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 52. And committee, we are running a little bit behind schedule. I'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 33. Amelia, would you mind giving us an overview on Senate Bill 33? And conferees, I would ask that you not read your testimony. Just a brief overview would be great. Most of it probably will be repetitive for this hearing. Thank you, Amelia.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 33, again, relates to Kansas adjusted gross income. And again, it is relating to the particular subsection of 7932.117C that you will find on page 8 of Senate Bill 33. It is paragraph 18. This particular bill would eliminate the current $75,000 federal adjusted gross income limitation. The bill would thereby then allow any Social Security benefit amounts that are included in a taxpayer's federal adjusted gross income to be subtracted for purposes of Kansas calculation beginning with tax year 2023. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Just to be clear, the marriage penalty, the cliff, all of it goes away with this. So, thank you. Committee, our first conferee is Glenda Du Bois again. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the same reasons that AARP Kansas, I'm Glenda Du Bois, the State Director for AARP Kansas. We do support Senate Bill 33 for all the reasons previously stated. I do want to make the correction. If I said $6 billion, that was my mistake. My copy says the same, the $10 billion as yours. So we do, again, feel that it would be smart for us to address Senate Bill 33 and that it would eliminate taxes again on Social Security and make it much easier for seniors and those 50 and older.
Thank you. Glenda, any questions, committee? Glenda, we would ask you which would be your preference, Senate Bill 33 or Senate Bill 52, if you got to choose?
You know, I would say that, and let me just say this, I would not say, because on behalf of AARP Kansas, right? AARP Kansas supports both bills, and we would be very supportive of either.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. Committee, I would draw your attention to the fiscal note on this one. I'm sure that'll be the major consideration. But, and I will put these on your agenda. We will be working the bills at some point. Senator Baumgardner, did you have a question?
If we could get from Eddie, the 38 states that have something similar, which bill is their legislation most like? Is it most like Bill 33, or is it most like what is in 52?
Yeah. Most states take an approach similar to 33, where the entirety of Social Security benefits are exempted.
Okay. And do we know yet, Madam Chair, what is the number of individuals in our state that this would impact if we were to go with 33?
So I think that would be a question for revenue. Kathleen, would you mind providing that to the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, our next conferee, Jason Watkins. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Watkins, appearing on behalf of the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. I will be very quick because I gave you more detail on the last bill than I intended. So most of what I was going to say now I've already covered. But I will speak just to the two questions. It is important to point out, again, 12 states tax Social Security at some level or another, and that's going down to 11 because Colorado is going to 0. So to Senator Baumgardner's question, that's 39 states, 38 going to 39, that do not tax Social Security whatsoever, which is what this bill, Senate Bill 33, does, and that is what the chamber is the most supportive of. You raised the fiscal note. As I recall, the fiscal note, I think, and it's in my testimony, was about $147 million per year. Remember how we do fiscal notes. We look at it and say, okay, this will cost the state treasury this. It does not consider at all any additional monies that will come into the state treasury based on the change in policy that you adopt. So I've not seen a study. I will say if there's 38 going to 39 states that don't tax Social Security at all, I guess it's working out okay in the majority of states. I referenced in my earlier testimony the benefit of that money being left in the consumer's pocket. There's probably nobody on this committee that thinks that government is more efficient with the use of dollars than the private sector is. We are much better off as a state leaving that money in the private sector and letting it turn over in our state economy over and over again. That does produce tax value and tax revenue for the state. So with that, I'd stand for questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, you mentioned earlier about the economics of this policy. My question is workforce. I mean, I'd also see this as a workforce issue. Do you hear from your members because of the tax and marriage penalties we have in the state of Kansas because of this policy. Sorry, I don't have a little Doppler thing. Do you see people are getting pushed out of the workforce early, or because they want to continue working, let's say, because they're healthy and they love their job, but because of the penalty, they are leaving the workforce?
Yeah, you see two things with that, Senator, and that's a very good question, and because it does impact workforce, and you see two things. You see seniors that are not participating in the workforce at all because of what they consider a penalty, and it is a penalty. The other thing that you see are seniors who don't participate in the workforce as much. They will limit them, depending on the job, depending on their financial situation, they may work, but they have to limit themselves to say 18 hours a week or 22 hours a week when they would prefer to work 40 hours a week. You know, we've a lot of advances with healthcare. People are living longer. People are healthier at older ages than they have been in the past. They're able to participate in the workforce if we'll let them. We're not letting them because of this policy.
Absolutely. Senator Blasey.
I agree with you. I mean, since this policy has been out, it was introduced, I'm hearing from numerous constituents who have mentioned, you know, moving to Texas or Florida because of this policy, and they would love to stay in the state, but because of these policies, they're considering moving. So I'm like you, I would like to join the other, I guess, 39 states in abolishing this tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was curious, there are some individuals that I think the Social Security age is 65 when they start collecting, and some that retire at 65 sometimes don't collect and delay it because of the sales tax. Do you see, I'm not sure who to ask this question to, do you think more people will now opt in to collect Social Security at 65 if we exempt the sales tax? And I don't see it as a problem, but I'm just wondering if that adds anything to the impact of any of this.
So Senator, we'll address your question to Eddie, to Legislative Research, and I know he'll end up going to Revenue, and it would just be an estimate. We have no way of knowing that number. So, thank you. Eddie, would you mind looking into that if you can? I know.
I'd be happy to look at it. I don't think our office will be able to provide any estimates on the likelihood of people changing the point in which they begin to collect Social Security, though. I don't think we'll be able to get to that question.
The only way I could see that we could do it is we could look at a state that converted and then possibly capture whether they decreased or increased. Just see if it's available. If it's not, we'll try.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Senator Holland.
Just a brief suggestion. I would suggest we look to either NCSL and their tax resources, or go to some of these national tax foundations. I'm sure they probably have some data on this, as the behavioral impacts of implementing these changes.
Well, Eddie's one of the best. So believe me, if it's out there, he will find it. So thank you. Committee, any other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will be brief. I really appreciate, Mr. Watkins, you mentioning the dynamic or static versus dynamic on the tax, because they will spend more, increased sales tax revenue. I don't know if you have a copy of your testimony or not, but it starts off by saying, on behalf of the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce and our nearly 1,500, is that 1,500 pets or?
1,500 members, did I leave a word out?
Yeah, well, you left several words out, but thank you, Madam Chair.
I'll let my staff know.
Committee, any other questions? Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, I will draw your attention to proponent testimony. Committee, Jim Kane is an individual who called my office and was concerned about this issue, and so he has sent in testimony. Spencer Duncan, Dave Trobert, all proponents. Anybody else? Seeing none. Opponents? Neutral? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 33. Committee, I'll draw your attention. We do have one last hearing. It will go quick, but Senate Bill 81. Amelia, thank you. And then I'm going to give you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 81, again, relates to Kansas adjusted gross income, but this time we're going to be looking at a different subsection or a different paragraph, not the Social Security paragraph. So if you want to follow along, the amended language is on pages 6 and 7 of your bill. The bill would amend KSA 7932-117C and its paragraph 10 to include in the subtraction modification that is currently there, to include the amount of the work opportunity tax credit and similar disallowances under 26 USC 280C, and to provide that for taxable years beginning after December 31st of 2019, that the provisions of this paragraph, this subtraction modification, would also apply to the employee retention credit disallowance. These are federal disallowances. The subtraction modification for the work opportunity tax credit disallowance and the employee retention credit disallowance would be limited to 25% of the amount of each of those disallowances. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? Seeing none. Committee, I'll draw your attention to the fiscal note on this. And we did have this legislation last year. We started out at 100%. The fiscal note was 0. By the end of session and conference committee reports, the fiscal note went to $100 million. So I would tell you that's why I brought the bill in at 25% to see where we would land. Fiscal note's at $7 million approximately now. So we'll need to take a look at where we want to land. Thank you, Amelia, after listening to the conferees. Senator Holland.
I'm sorry, I'll wait for conferees.
Thank you. Our first conferee committee. Sorry, I've got to pull my sheet up. Is Carol Castle. Carol, welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I was here last year to talk about the modification denial at the Kansas Department of Revenue level for the target or the employee retention tax credit that was enacted as part of the CARES Act and the COVID relief. Historically, Kansas has allowed a modification for federal jobs credits, such as the WOTC, and the previous, its predecessor, the targeted jobs tax credit. The legislation that brought about the employee retention tax credit referenced the same federal code section, 280C, as the WOTC and the TJTC before it, which has historically, again, been modified by Kansas to allow the deduction as there is no state tax benefit received by the taxpayer. We would ask that the modification specific to the employee retention tax credit that was disallowed for 2020 and 2021, which had the effect of causing those wages in Kansas to be taxed twice for Kansas taxes, be allowed at 100% rather than 25%. So now that we have a little better handle on the fiscal note, the WOTC credit has been a longstanding credit at 100%. It is a much more minimal piece, but it has value, particularly to small employers employing groups that are maybe hard to get employed otherwise. So my request is specific to ERTC and the impact it had on our Kansas employers as they struggled through a very difficult economic time.
Thank you, Carol. And to be clear, this is just a short-term.
It is 2020 and 2021 tax years, and I don't anticipate that we would ever see federal legislation like that again, and I think we would have to address it at the time if we did.
Yes, thank you. Committee, are there any questions for Carol? Senator Holland.
Thank you. Carol, thanks for being here today. I assume this employee retention tax credit applies more to just the hospitality industry, correct?
It would have applied to any employer that met the size requirements. So small employers in 2020, small to medium in 2021. So it was limited to employers that were impacted by closure orders, et cetera, as a result of the COVID pandemic. But it wasn't limited to the hospitality industry, although they were greatly affected.
Okay, and then, Madam Chair, could I have a research request? Would that be appropriate? Okay, and just for full disclosure to the committee, I actually have a company that has applied for, and I think will be receiving employee retention credits. But what I want to know is really from KDOR, what is the policy currently for, I guess, taxing these things? And what is the policy argument for getting rid of the tax? And that's, I guess, what I'm looking from a taxation perspective. What does KDOR see as the policy issue question? Thank you.
No, thank you. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Carol. Yes, any other proponents? Any opponents? Any neutral? We'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 81. Committee, we will be trying to work legislation. Hopefully, we'll have some time next week. I want to put on your radar Senate Bill 30, Senate Bill 33, Senate Bill 94, Senate Bill 53, Senate Bill 54, Senate Bill 40, and Senate Bill 41 to start with. Also 96 and 81, I'll add those too. It's quite a list, I know, committee. We've had more, I'll read the list again. Senate Bill 30, Senate Bill 33, Senate Bill 94, Senate Bill 53, Senate Bill 54, Senate Bill 40, Senate Bill 41, Senate Bill 96, Senate Bill 81, and then I'll continue, 29, Senate Bill 60, Senate Bill 7, Senate Bill 8, Senate Bill 80, and Senate Bill 97. Committee, there are others, and we have had other bills signed, including the Department of Aging and other bills that we've had hearings on. We are limited on time, so we are trying to get as much done as possible. Senator Holland.
Madam Chair, thank you for that information. When do we start working those bills?
We're going to try next week. We have hearings committee on the Department of Revenue and the BODA's budgets, and then we will work those budgets, and we will work bills then as time permits after we finish the budgets. And then I'll queue up for more hearings the next week. We'll have hearings on the single rate income tax the next week, and one that you haven't heard yet, but I will be requesting the bill tomorrow, most likely freedom from government competition. And we'll try to queue up the aging and a couple other hearings too, and work bills as permitted. Thank you. Senator Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just so I understand, is that relatively the rough sequence we're going to work them? So as I want to prepare amendments, I just work from the top down?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That is the order we will be working the legislation, just for the committee's benefit. So, yes, so if you do have amendments, and I'm sure there are some, please get with Amelia and understand that she has, I've been told there are more tax bills in the Senate Tax Committee than ever. So I appreciate you guys. I don't know, I guess we get the work done. So, yeah. Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So are we meeting every day next week? Can we make that assumption right now?
No, I'm trying to, we're meeting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult when we're pro forma Monday. It makes, yeah, but we will end up meeting a Monday or two coming up.
Sounds
So,
good. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yep. Thanks, committee. Any other business before the committee or questions? Thank you guys for your work. I know we've been pushing it pretty hard. Thank you.